Standing atop the scenic Plymouth Hoe, Smeaton's tower overlooks the harbour below, drawing in thousands of tourists every year. But the story of the tower's origin and that of its creator is often less told. Born in the city of Leeds on the 8th of June 1724 to the owner of a law firm, the young John Smeaton would be educated in Leeds Grammar School. Following graduation, he would initially go on to work alongside his father in the family business. However, he would later be drawn into becoming a maker of mathematical instruments, aiding in the development of such instruments as the pyrometer, a device to be used in the study of material expansion. The young John Smeaton would show his skills and capability in the fields of engineering and physics, going on to become a self-proclaimed civil engineer. He would go on to become renowned for his work in design in projects such as canals, harbours and lighthouses, so much so in fact that he would go on to be later regarded as the father of civil engineering.
Despite being elected to the esteemed Royal Society in the year 1753 for his various works, Smeaton would not be content to sit on his laurels. His 1759 paper entitled An Experimental Inquiry Concerning the Natural Powers of Water and Wind to Turn Mills and Other Machines Depending on Circular Motion, which was based upon foundations previously laid down by Smeaton's friend Mr. Rouse, would lay down the basis for the Smeaton coefficient. Following several small-scale experiments conducted upon water wheels over the next few years, this would enable greater efficiency, contributing greatly to the Industrial Revolution. Through his connections at the Royal Society, Smeaton was to be recommended to design a lighthouse to guide ships around the treacherous Eddystone Rocks in 1753. Heavily eroded and battered by the sea, the rocks had long provided a dangerous obstacle to shipping heading into Plymouth, resulting in many shipwrecks over the years, particularly when the rocks were concealed beneath high tides. So feared was this stretch of water, many mariners make a point of hugging the French coast for as long as possible, which provided many problems in of itself. But given the difficulty in trying to gain a foothold on the rocks themselves, little had been done to establish any warning signals.
While initially a lighthouse had stood in the area, built by Henry Winstanley, that tower had been all but obliterated over half a century before when the great storm of 1703 was unleashed upon the English coast, claiming Winstanley himself and 5 others into destruction. Following that tragedy, the leaseholder of the rocks, Captain John Lovett, would hire John Rudyard to design the second lighthouse. The second lighthouse had been built as a conical wooden structure around a core of bricks and concrete. Calked like a ship, the vertical planks were installed by 2 master shipwrights. The whole structure would also be anchored to the reef using a series of 36 iron bolts forged to fit deep inside machine-cut holes. While certainly more durable than the original, this lighthouse would be destroyed in a fire in December 1755.
Deciding to start construction at Mill Bay in 1756, Smeaton would design and build a jetty in the southwestern corner of the harbour to aid the arduous tasks of unloading and working on the stones. Timber rails of 3.5 foot would be laid to then move masonry around the site, and eventually to the 10-ton ship, which was waiting patiently to take the stones out to the reef, carrying out 2.25-ton foundation stone to its resting place in the quiet morning of June 12, 1756. Unlike the previous conical towers favoured before, Smeaton would model his tower based on the shape of an oak tree, with a wider base for support. The foundations of this tower, along with its outer structure, were built from local granite quarried from the moors. Meanwhile, he declared that lighter Portland limestone was to be used to create the interior. During the project himself, Smeaton would come to pioneer the use of hydraulic lime, a revolutionary form of mortar that would be able to set underwater, as well as a new technique involving the use of dovetail blocks of granite.
Finally completed 3 years later for the meagre sum of £40,000, over £6 million in today's money, the lighthouse stood an impressive 72 feet high with a diameter of 26 feet at the base and 17 feet at the peak. As a reward for their efforts in the great undertaking, Trinity House, after working with the Admiralty, would grant each of the project workers a medal to render them exempt from the predations of the press gangs rampant in Plymouth at the time. No small consolation. Furthermore, the revolutionary design of the lighthouse would go on to become the standard for such buildings all over the world due to its ability to withstand even the most powerful of storms. For Britain's budding empire, this would prove invaluable.
Smeaton's tower was put out of action in 1877, when the erosions of the very rocks at its base would destabilise the entire structure, causing it to sway violently whenever large waves crashed against it. However, the design would still prove to be exceptional. Not only was the new lighthouse built on a nearby reef by James Douglas, using Smeaton's techniques, but when the lighthouse was dismantled in 1882 to form a memorial, only the upper part could be removed, as foundations proved too strong to be dismantled. They can still be seen today as a stub on the Eddystone rocks.
The tower itself was declared open to the public by the Mayor of Plymouth on September 24, 1884. Following this, a banquet was held which most of the mayors of Devon and Cornwall were in attendance. To this day, Smeaton's Tower has remained open to the public, with the area around it previously little more than grazing fields for cattle, becoming landscaped heavily by the city. The memorialisation of the lighthouse shows how it became a beacon of significance to the people of Plymouth, as a link to the past and to the wider world.
But on the morning of April 3rd, 1913, the tower had become a beacon for something very different. That morning, residents awoke to find the lighthouse painted with a message to the future Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, left by the suffragette movement. It read, "To Churchill, no security until you give women votes, no matter how big the navy." Votes for Women and Death in 10 Minutes were also painted around the base. Further investigation revealed a homemade suffragette bomb consisting of a cylinder packed with explosive matter planted at the entrance to Smeaton's Tower. Fortunately for the authorities, the fuse had blown out, rendering the device harmless. It had been left as a protest against the arrival of Churchill and the other Lords of Admiralty that very same morning.